Welcome back to the Adventure Athletes podcast, world's #1 podcast for adventure athletes, celebrating those going through virtuous struggles in order to benefit the world around them. In this week's episode, I sit down with ultra runner from South Wales, Sarah Skuse, who's training for her first 100-mile race. In this week's episode, we talk about setting an example for your children, the addictive nature of running ultramarathons, what training looks like and how it changes throughout the year, and what makes you a runner. Now, at the end of each episode, our guest sets a weekly challenge for you guys to get involved and train more like an adventure athlete. Now, if you want to find the back catalogue of the previous challenges set, head over to adventureathletes.co.uk and check out the section on our podcasts and the weekly challenges. Now, at the start of each episode as well, I like to give a shout out to someone that's inspired me and is doing great things for the adventure athlete community. This week's shout out is going to go to my coach, Grant Grigo, who's just completed his second 100-mile race of the year. He's doing the GB Ultra X Grand Slam of 100 milers. So he's running 400 milers in the space of about 6 months, I think it is. Absolutely incredible, and he's already halfway there. We will be catching up with him soon on the podcast as well, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Talking about community as well, I have launched an Adventure Athletes WhatsApp community, so if you want to take part in the community, find out more about what's going on behind the scenes, check out the link in the description below where you can find not just that, but all the information from our guests and everything Adventure Athletes as well, including my BigMoose fundraiser, where I will be attempting a tire flip marathon in 10 weeks to try and not just break a world record, but to raise £10,000 for BigMoose. So if you've got any spare cash and you feel like donating to an absolutely amazing cause, head out to my fundraising link and donate below. But for now, enjoy the podcast. So what was your personal call to adventure? What took you from where you used to be into doing the sort of stuff that you do now?
I guess it'd been a tough time, a tough few years. Work-wise, had been really challenging. I'd been in quite a toxic environment work-wise, and I sort of lost a lot of confidence, and I was a mum of two, so time for fitness had gone out of the window completely, and I suddenly sort of took some time off work and tried to walk my daughter to school to find that I really wasn't fit enough to do it. And it's a mile or so up the road, a little bit uphill, but I was in absolute agony with my shins because my calves were so tight. So I think that was the time when I thought, well, this is not the way I want to live my life. I've always enjoyed being able to get out and walk and enjoy the countryside, so I thought, I've got to get fit. So I literally couldn't walk fast enough to get my heart rate up because of the pain in my legs. So I started shuffling on Couch to 5K. And I quietly did that on my own, using the app, and eventually got through it. I mean, probably took me a little bit longer than that, 9 weeks, but I got through it. And my daughter and I started going to parkrun. She came along to the first one with me and we did our first park run. And I thought, I'll keep going at this. This is good. This is getting me fitter. And I did my first 10K. So that was back in 2019. Also August 2019, I completed an extremely hot Severn Bridge 10K. So then as we were getting towards the autumn, I'd run on my own throughout that time, got up to that distance on my own, and I thought, well, if I don't get running with others, the winter's just going to stop all of this progress, and I wasn't prepared to give it up. I was really enjoying feeling fitter and stronger. So I joined my running club, Sizzler's Wherry Runners, and I remember the very first run I did was up Mountain Road, so from the 14 locks, up Mountain Road, 20 minutes out, 20 minutes back. That was a shock to the system. It was all uphill. But through the support of fantastic club members, I got up the hill and back again and kept going, and met some really fantastic fellow runners, and started to realise that I was one of them. I mean, it took me a long time to actually pluck up the courage and go and be a runner with them, because I sometimes still don't believe I'm a runner. So I carried on, got caught up in being part of that group, and ran my first half marathon with one of my fellow runners from there. Ran it all together. The two of us did it all the way, all the way around together, and it was brilliant. It was the St David's Newport half marathon, which is, I think, always very close to the 1st of March. It was bloody freezing. We were coming down off the dual carriageway at the most exposed site on the run, and it absolutely hailed it down. It was freezing, but we finished, and it was brilliant. It was a brilliant feeling to finish, a big race. So I carried on running, and the lady I'd run the half marathon with, she had got a place at Newport Marathon, and she was training for Newport Marathon. So I said, I never want to run a marathon. That's not me. I can't do that. So I said, but I'll do all the training with you. I'd love to train with you. I'd love to be part of what you're doing. So there were many, many miles up and down the canal, training for her marathon, which at that point, when she started her training, was Newport Marathon. At some point through her training, she ended up getting a London place somehow. I can't remember quite how. And those two marathons were within 3 weeks of each other, and she said, there is absolutely no way I am running 2 marathons in 3 weeks. This is my first ever marathon, probably my last, my only. I want you to have my other marathon place. I was like, nah, no thank you. But I did go, and I ran Newport Marathon, and I completed it. I remember coming across the line, and looking at that flight of steps in Friars Walk that takes you up to the upper level of Friars Walk, and thinking, oh heck, I've got to climb up those. And literally my daughter was behind me, pushing me from behind because my legs were knackered. So that was my first marathon, and I carried on running. I just carried on running. So I did a couple more marathons, just Snowdonia Marathon, so got a little bit of elevation off the road marathon. But it wasn't quite me. And then I started leading groups. I started leading our Couch to 5K, and bumped into Stu doing a Couch to 5K group. He came along, and it was off the back of his Wild Horse 200 a few years ago. And he was, talking about trails and stuff, and I guess that sort of sparked the interest in a little bit in what that was all about. And I started doing a little bit more running off the road and off onto the trails. And after the first Snowdonia Marathon, my mate Liz said, I signed up to an ultra. I said, you've done what? Yeah, I've signed up to an ultra. I was like, oh well, if you're doing it, I'll do it then. And she said, well, and I've got myself some coaching. I said, well, if you've got coaching, I'm having coaching too. So I started training for the Howham, which I completed last year. So this training, I think, started in about February time. And we trained together, but sadly she got injured, so she wasn't able to run. But I ended up running and completing the Howham, which was magical. And I started to get a taste of that sense of community that ultra running has, and met people along the way, literally along the way, like chugging up that sodding great hill towards the source of the Severn, talking to people I'd never met before, and really in-depth conversations, really deep, heartful conversations about people's lives, and really getting to know them. And then you sort of leave that checkpoint. Sometimes you leave people behind, and you catch up with other people, and you have other conversations. But those people have now, I think, I call them my friends. They've become good friends, and we've had some really good laughs and great runs together.
Yeah. Have you done any other ultras since the Howham?
Oh yeah, I sat down with my very large burger and chips after I'd completed the Howham in a little cafe, and promptly signed up to the Ridham, which was the September. So I completed that one. Another hot day, and that was a tough one. I don't know why it felt tougher than Howham. I think because I expected thought I had this nailed now. It's easy. It wasn't. And then I did the OTT Brecon, which was a really beautiful December day, or November I think, and it was freezing, absolutely freezing. I remember being on top of Penavan, thinking, well, I've got to descend Jacob's ladder now, and I can't feel my hands, which are attached to my poles, and I can't feel my legs, and let alone my feet. So this could go really, really well, or really, really wrong. But yeah, fantastic run along some really technical and challenging trail, that run. But I finished, admittedly in the dark, down that valley into Merthyr. It's just one very boggy, very muddy, very slippy shithole. And at one point there's a little waterfall.
Yeah.
Which, when it is nearly dark and you are on your own and have been on your own for ages, and it hasn't stopped raining since 8 o'clock or something the day before, 8 o'clock that morning, it had rained all day and had been raining, I think, for several days before. It was just coming down, and I thought, okay, we've got to cross this. We're not going back. We've got to cross this. So, 1 foot at a time, 1 pole at a time, we got to cross. And it's those things, it's something. It's why do we do this? Well, I think it's, you've got to do things that scare you. I think it's made me a stronger person. So, emotionally, physically, and get across the rivers, get up the hills.
Yeah, I was at the OTT marathon, the ultra, and that waterfall was no joke. Like, full-on waterfall, wasn't it?
It was full-on, and lots of people are sort of, if I'd had somebody else with me, you probably would have laughed, but I got to the waterfall, I thought, shit, and the taff is there, isn't it? Hurtling past you, and you think, well, I'll give this a go, but I might end up in Cardiff before I know it.
Yeah.
But, lovely warm welcome from the guys when you got back to Merthyr, and, it was, it was well worth it, and, as much as I loved the Howham and the Ridham, those conditions really sort of excited me, scared the shit out of me, but excited me as well. I loved it. And I did sign up to Brecon Cardiff Extreme. And I trained hard for it. I trained through the winter. It's an early year ultra. So there, I was up in the Brecon Beacons through the through a lot of this winter. There were times I remember I'd done a long run, and I'd been up on Penavan once already, and I was coming back up the road in the valley, and I'd looked and I'd given myself a deal at the reservoir. If I can see the ridge, I'll go back up onto the ridge and onto Penavan. Otherwise, I'll just do the chicken shoot back to the car. And I got there, and it was beautiful. I thought, okay, we'll do it then. So I trudged alongside the forest again. And literally, as soon as I got to the ridge, the clouds came down. And by the time I got to the summit, it was blowing a blizzard. So, but it's all of that. I really enjoyed training. But I didn't finish Brecon to Cardiff. I didn't make the cut off at Merthyr. But still really enjoyed the run, and still sense of achievement.
You've gone out, you've put yourself in some horrendous conditions, and you've run a long time. Like that's what it's about. That's what you're there for. So I think sometimes finishing isn't required to enjoy yourself. At what point though do you think that you're going to feel like a runner? Listing everything that you've just done, at what point is it like, okay, no, like I am a runner?
Yeah, I saw a nutritionist just at the beginning of this year to help me out with some sort of nutrition issues, and she would insist on calling me an athlete, and I'd be like, well, who? Oh, me. But I don't know.
If it was anyone else that you was talking to, at what point would you then consider them a runner?
Oh, well, all my couch 5Ks are runner. My couchies are runners. They're all brilliant.
Yeah. So how do you think you can almost like get that across to yourself into how like feeling like a runner yourself?
I don't know. I mean, I've always, throughout my whole life, I've always, I've done various different sort of fitness things, but it's always been very much I'm not built for running. I can't run. I couldn't run for a bus. And yeah, my eldest daughter reminds me of that frequently. You said you couldn't do that, now look at you. Yes, well, there you go.
No, it's really good that they're seeing that though, and I think that's like a good lesson of like if you really work at something, which you clearly have, from not being able to walk a mile to then running like 30 plus miles, like that's quite a big difference. Yeah. How did you sort of make that change in your head of like I can't do this thing to then being like, you know what, I'm going to try, I'm going to get out, I'm going to work hard? Because it must have been really difficult to start with and not being able to do it. Like, how do you convince yourself to keep trying anyway?
I think, I've got 2 daughters, and I want them to know that they've got to find time for themselves, they've got to look after them, look after them, their health. I want to be there for them as long as possible. And I want them to work hard at things they're determined to do. And I can only get that across to them by setting that example. So, I hope that, the hours that I am away running and training, they can get that sense of, that's mum's working hard at something that's important to her and challenges me. It scares me sometimes. And I think it's important to do things that scare us.
Yeah. How has it been working with Stu as well to get you to your ultras?
I think it's been an incredible journey, and I for one anyway, don't appreciate what's happening until it's happened, as it were. So it's not just about here's your programme, get on with it. I mean, there's an element of that. There's no mollycoddling, let's face it. But there's your programme, get on with it. But it's the way it builds. So, and I'm getting used to the peaks and the flows of the coaching pattern now. But he always listens. So before the Howam, I'd sort of, it comes in stages, doesn't it? So I said, the distance, I've got the distance in my head now. I can do the distance. I'm confident I can do the distance. But the elevation is scaring me. So he had one of his social runs planned, and I was able to get to that run. And not only did I do the elevation and more that was needed for Howam in that run, albeit shorter, I also met other people that day as well, who were inspirational. They just one of them had just come off the back of Wild Horse last year, Others had, many ultras under their belt, and I was able to finish that run and think, I've got this, I can do this. So it's the psychological and the physical that he's really, really helped me with, because he listens to what is worrying me about any particular run, and the training then gets tweaked and changed along the way.
Yeah. Something that I heard a lot then, which I feel like a lot more people need to do, is be honest with your coach.
He gets that in bucket loads, whether he likes it or not. Absolutely. And we talk a lot, and a majority of the time I stick to my plan. There are times when life gets in the way and the plan goes out the window, but by and large I try and stick to it, because what's the point in paying somebody to coach you if you don't listen to the plan and you do your own thing anyway? There are weeks when I think I want to be doing more. There are weeks when I think it's all too much. It's just, I'm knackered, I'm exhausted, I'm feeling, I'm running and I feel crap. But it's always at that, I know it now, so I can manage the sort of emotional response to it. But there's that bit in the training plan when it's like, it's really hard, and then you start to come down the other side, and then you start to reap the rewards, and you see that progress come really, really rapidly. But when you're doing the hard slog up that sort of curve, you think, I'm crap, I can't do this, I'm not getting any better, this is rubbish. And then it comes, it's like, oh yeah, that's what it was. It's like, because I don't always realise the training load has sort of ramped up, because what does it say? Right, okay, go and do it.
Yeah, I'm very much like Stu in the fact that I love the numbers, so there is no way I would not notice that the training's gone up. I would just be looking at the stats being like, oh, I've run like twice as much as usual. But yeah, I think it's great to have a coach like that will just do all of that for you. Whereas I know doing it for myself, I really struggle with, because I'm so easy to just be like, I'm feeling good, so I'm just going to do more, and I'll do more, and I'll add more in, and then before you know it, you've done way too much. So yeah, having a coach that's good with numbers is always helpful. Stu's definitely a good choice for that. How's his coaching sort of progressed with you then? Because you've been with him for, is it over a year now?
Over a year. It looks completely different in many ways. It's like when I was talking earlier about elevation being sort of my worry. The program is all find 800 feet, 1,000 feet, 1,200 feet. That would be my long run. So it wouldn't be about distance; it would be about elevation. The distance would just drop in naturally. Early days, he'd offer me routes because I didn't know where to go or how to plan a run. I don't think I need that now. I tend to plan my own runs, and I've been on enough runs and enough races to be able to pinch a bit off here and there and make my own up. I don't know. It goes through phases. There'll be lots of sometimes there'll be lots of speed work. Sometimes there'll be lots of strength work or intervals, hill intervals. Sometimes the long runs are not that long, and sometimes, like this week, they're colossal.
Out of that journey you've taken us through then, from struggling to do a mile to now running multiple ultras, at what point in that journey would you say was like the hardest moments for you? Like, what points have you just really struggled being like, I'm really not sure if I can do this now?
There's probably spots on that Newport Marathon where I really questioned myself, my ability to get to the end. And let's face it, given the course, it's not surprising because it's pretty bleak and pretty flat and pretty boring. But I guess, I don't know, I suppose there's often a moment of, what have I let myself in for this time? I've got 100 next month, and a little, there's a little bit of me thinks, well, okay, but I've come to the attitude of, rather than worrying about finishing, just get to the start. Just get to the start and see what happens. I stood on the start line of Brecon to Cardiff Extreme, having worked out that I probably wouldn't make the cut-off, but it still would have been a run with the biggest elevation I've ever done, or a race with the biggest elevation I've ever done, to just get to Merthyr, and I did that, and I did it with some of my best times. So if you don't get on the start line, you don't know what's going to happen, and I might just finish.
Yeah. Now, when you said you've got 100 next month, is that 100 miler, to clarify?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the Epona?
Mm-hmm.
How are you feeling for that?
Okay. There's some current back and forth between Stu and I around whether I'm going to sleep or not. We haven't quite agreed on that yet. But I've got my head around it. I've rackied the route well, I think, over the last months. So I should, navigation-wise, I feel okay about it. I know I can do each of the big elevations individually. I've just got to string it all together on the day and see how it goes.
Yeah. I've always wanted to do a 100 miler. I've never plucked up the courage to sign up for one as of yet. But it's something that's definitely on my bucket list. And the more people I have on this podcast, the more people they keep trying to talk me into it.
Yeah, no, that's the danger. I think it was a definite no before the Ridham last year, and we went out on a social run, and there happened to be a couple of the guys who'd done the really long events. So Vic had done the Backyard Ultra. There were other people who'd done 100, 200. And I was just listening. You end up listening to them. You end up listening to their stories, and drip, 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 it comes in. And I think I'd finished the Ridham, and I was like, I think I admitted to Stu, I was contemplating. Brilliant, let's get a drink in then. Let's meet up for a drink, and that was it. And a slippery slope. So it's gone from I'll make a start to believing there's a chance I can finish.
Yeah, it's just a very intimidating distance when you first see it, and everyone makes it sound like so chalant when they've done one. They're like, oh yeah, I've just did a 100 miler, and it's like, you've done what? And it's like, yeah, I've run 100 miles, and I still just can't get over that concept in my head. Like, the furthest I've ran is I did the OTT Ultra, so that's 30 miles, and then I've done a 50-mile barefoot walk as well, and even that, I'm like, I'd have to do that twice. And that took me almost 24 hours, and I just can't get my head around it. What made you want to do that in the first place?
He's been surrounded by these netters, isn't it, really? It fascinated me, and not that I will... Stu did it Stu did his 200 in a crazy time, didn't he? But, and I'll probably take nearly as long as that to do the 100. But, it's just, I don't know. It's pushing yourself, isn't it? It's finding how much you can achieve. And unfortunately on this journey you meet other mad people who are doing the same thing, and then you end up taking each other along with you, don't you? But yeah, I think it's that mental strength more than anything for me. It's life is stressful. work is stressful, although I love it. And getting out on the hills and being in my own head, just running, allows me the strength to do the rest of what I have to do in life.
Yeah.
So, I don't think I need to do 100 miles just to achieve that, but, it's...
And you said before you was just doing road running and it just wasn't quite for you. What do you feel like the difference is between road running and trail running? Like, what makes it that much different?
There's a sense of freedom, being out in the outdoors. I was out fairly early this morning. All the greenery is lush because it's just started growing. It was absolutely saturated with dew and water from the night before, and you're brushing past bushes and you're absolutely soaking wet from them. And the mud, and I love the mud. I do love the mud. Some would say I spend far too much time falling over in it, but I do love the mud. It's birdsong, views, just that sense of space. So yeah, it's all of that for me. I mean, my dad loved the mountains as well, so I do find being able to tread in his footsteps sometimes very easy, and very nice to feel close to him.
Yeah. No, I think there's definitely something special about trail running. It is just you tend to just forget that you're running because you're just in a nice area and you're just moving through it. Whereas on the road, it's very much like, looking at my watch. What pace am I at? Am I moving fast enough? I don't feel like I can walk. Whereas on a trail, it's like, if you want to stop and take some pictures, then feel free. And the best is always the aid stations at the events, especially the Pegasus ones. Like, I've heard amazing things. I'll be doing my first Pegasus event this year, so I'm very excited. I'm doing the Rhythm.
Oh, awesome.
Just because I live here, so it's like round here, I can't not do it. So I was actually running part of the route this morning, the bit from the Ridgeway Golf Club down that way through the bogs and then up the other mountain. And I sent Reese a video of me running through the bog, and I was like, loving the route, mate. And he was like, I'm sorry to say that's really like tame for the route, like it's usually way worse. And he sent me some pictures back, and I was like, oh, okay. All right, I got that to look forward to.
There's the really boggy bit on one of the paths, and I've seen pictures of people up to their hips in there. Luckily, when you do get instructions from Reese at the beginning. The really boggy puddle in the middle of the path, you have to go straight through the middle. Don't deviate. And you're looking at it going, I really want to deviate. But when Reese says go straight through the middle, I'm going to go straight through the middle. And I did go straight through the middle, and it was all fine. But as soon as you deviate off that path, it's horrendous. And then there's a really lovely cow field after that, which is horrendous. Last year it was really quite dry, so I don't think we suffered with the bogs too much. But I took my mate a little later in the year along the St Kenneth Dyke route and around, and I hadn't really factored in the fact that I'd done it in dry weather, and now we were really. And I said to her, it might be a bit boggy, but I didn't really prepare her, and she doesn't do mud. And then as we came, the ridge you can see down into Pontypridd, the rain was horizontal, and it was really, really strong winds to the point that if I stopped moving, I had to crouch down because it was so foul, the weather. So I don't think she's forgiven me for that run yet.
Just describing it like that to most people just makes them wonder, what on earth are you doing? Like, why are you doing that? It's something I've never had an answer for, so maybe you do.
I don't think I do. I mean, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I mean, I can't tell you how many times my mother has asked me, how long is that race? It's 100 miles, Mum. 100 miles? What, All at the same time? Yes, Mum, all at the same time. Oh. Dozens of times we've had that conversation. I didn't know it was 100 miles. You do.
It is just something that most people will never quite understand. It's why you would want to run 100 miles. And I think Stu said it perfectly on his podcast, where he was like, people will ask me, like, why I'm running 100 miles. And then he's just, most people will then just say to him, like, I don't even drive 100 miles. And he's like, well, neither do I, but I'll run it. And it's just that mindset of the people that do these things is like, we also wouldn't like to drive that far, but we're out and we're running and we're moving. And it's just, then nothing seems better. Not that I've done one and I haven't got one on the list. But...
No, neither have I yet. I mean, 30 is about as far as I've gone, so it'll be a whole new experience at home now.
You seem excited for it though, so I feel like that's a good starting point.
Yeah, it was really good to volunteer at Wild Horse on the weekend and just get a taste of, what I'm letting myself in for on steroids, if you like, when they were doing the 200. But yeah, to see firsthand what people were experiencing and to be a little part of helping them get through it was a really good, and picked up a couple of tips along the way, things to do, things not to do.
Yeah. What makes you sign up as a volunteer for one of these events then? Because that's equally as miserable, if not more miserable, than doing the event.
Oh, I wasn't miserable on the weekend. I think I just grinned from start to finish. I think for me, I can't always do the Pegasus events because they're a Saturday. I can usually drop in at some point, so it means I can give back a little, and it's that sense of community. It's not just about the running; it's being around the people who, as I say, have become friends, it's just brilliant to be part of people's journey. I love to be part of people's running journey now. Whether it's Couch to 5K or volunteering on a Pegasus run, volunteering at Wild Horse, it just gives me an awful lot of pleasure. I think as well with Wild Horse, part of it was wanting to see the event, wanting to see what running that type of distance is all about. It's also helped me manage my sleep deprivation, practice it. So as I said to you earlier, I've got three nights of no sleep data at all. Although I did sleep, my watch didn't pick it up. And yeah, amazingly, I was still functioning. Well, I think I was anyway, most of the time. So it made me, because I didn't. The last time I was sleep deprived trying to do something, I was falling asleep on my feet, literally. So I managed not to do that this time. So yeah, it's practicing a little bit of, it's a bit of an endurance event being a volunteer on Wild Horse. So yeah.
Yeah, I've always had so much respect for the volunteers, for any of the ultras. I just think back to doing the OTT, and they're just stood around in this miserable weather. They're probably absolutely freezing, but every time you see them, they've just got the biggest smiles on their faces, and they're so helpful. And I just can't imagine being that happy, being that miserable.
Yeah. No, they are. They're all brilliant when you see the volunteers.
How do you find the trail running community versus the road running community?
Oh, it's contentious. I find it increasingly more difficult, the road running community, and that's hard because I love my club, but it is a predominantly road running club. I love leading, but I can't lead on the trails, despite all the time I've had on the trails. I'm not covered to lead on the trails, so it's sort of by nature. Then, I'm always happy to lead. If if I'm doing a run, anybody's welcome to come with me, and I'm happy to lead and look after people along the way. But I can't do it officially, so most of the time then it's sort of taking me away from the club a little bit. But it's all about times, and I am not a fast runner. I am yet to finish a 5k under 30 minutes. And I think if I'd still been road running, that would have really bothered me. Because it's all about time. But it isn't in the ultra community. It isn't about time. It's about finishing. It's about trying, I think, even. Yeah. So yes, I find the road community a little more challenging as time goes on. The less I spend in it, I suppose.
Yeah. How much does the trail community benefit your training and your events then, would you say?
A lot. I mean, there are, I've got to know lots of people through Skuse, through Pegasus, and I've got people now that I can sort of say, do you fancy a run? So it means that I haven't done all my training for Epona solo. I've done some of it solo, but I've been able to link up with other runners that I know will be doing it. On the social runs that Stu does, meeting people who've done other things, just causes me to add to the list of possible maybes in the future.
Do you have anything in your head lined up for after the 100? No. So you're not thinking, oh, you know what, I'll do the Wild Horse next year?
I'm not thinking that. Others might be, but I'm not. I'm definitely booking the time off for Wild Horse next year, and I'd like to certainly be a part of it. At the moment, that's volunteering. This has been, so I've made the decision to do Epona back sort of December time. And it's sort of been a bit of a single goal this year. I think I've done DNF Brecon to Cardiff. I've done Alan's Trail Half Marathon in Shropshire, and the 50k, Bishop's Castle 50k. So there's been very little races this year. So the focus has been on Epona, and there's, other than accompanying one of my mates on a road 10k, afterwards there's nothing booked in. There will be, but it just feels that that has been the focus, and I've been happy for it to be the focus. Yeah. And I'm confident. I have it won't be the end of running, but I think want to take some time and work out what's coming next after that.
Could be endless.
It could be endless, yeah. Yeah, there are some that would like me to do Wild Horse.
Is Stu one of them?
Yes, he's even started telling me that it's happening. But I need to get this under my belt first.
Yeah. See how you cope with the 100 before you commit to a 200.
Yeah. And I've seen the state of them coming off the Wild Horse 200 now, so I'm like, yeah, I need to know that I'm not going to be quite as such a mess as some of them. I have popped too many blisters in the last week.
That's fair enough. I'm yet to deal with any issues like that with my running, so I'm quite fortunate.
Yeah, I haven't had any blisters yet. Let's see how next month comes, but some of the feet off Wild Horse were wow.
I can only imagine. 200 miles is some distance to cover.
Yeah. And a lot of bog.
Yeah.
By the seams of it.
That sounds like it fits with Reese perfectly, to be fair. He loves throwing it into his routes. It could quite easily be avoided in my experience, but
yeah. I think it's the sand at mile sort of, what would it be, 99 as well, that I think got him sworn at a little bit.
So, out of all the events you've done so far, then, which one has been your proudest achievement?
I think it's still the Howham, if I'm honest. It's still the Howham. I was really, pleased with how I ran that. Inevitably, I did run it. There was somebody else from my club running it, and they were very keen to be running with me, of which I knew wasn't going to happen. So literally within the first few meters of the race, they had disappeared. So it's I suppose it's my first. It's my first 30 miler, and I did it, and I think I experienced something got in my head towards the end of the run, and distracted me, but I managed just about to push through that, and to finish, and yeah, I think that's probably my proudest moment.
Yeah.
But I love them. I've enjoyed all three ultras I've done. I mean, I could tell you, and some of my training runs I've been very proud of because they've been solo runs, and I've overcome some difficult conditions.
Yeah. Have you experienced the wall at all? They talk about the runner's wall. Is that something you've come across yet, or is that something that hasn't bothered you?
I think I probably had that more in the Newport Marathon, if I'm honest. I think I remember getting to late teens of 18 miles sort of thing, and being ready to sort of give up. But I think I've learnt a lot throughout my time of running now, and I've had some fantastic nutrition advice this year off Hannah Rose, and learnt what to eat, when to eat it, what to drink, how much to drink, and really sort of tweaked my diet a bit over the last few months. So I'm finding now my energy levels through a run are much better.
Yeah. What's been like the most sort of beneficial advice Hannah's given you then? Because she actually came on the podcast a couple of days ago.
Oh, did she?
Yeah.
Ahaha. So I think it was just breaking it down. It's my diet was fairly healthy anyway. I'm unfortunately I quite like fruit and veg. I'm not a fussy eater, but it's sort of tweaking things. So I would probably go to bread quite quickly, bread based lunch. So that sort of quite quickly got switched to sort of more whole grain foods. So often my go-to lunch now is a bit of rice and salad and a poached egg, which sounds like an odd combination, but it suits me. Eating more, actually. I wasn't very good at eating sort of consistently throughout the day. I think because I've always been, I was about 2 stone heavier before I started running. So I've always been sort of heavier sort of build than most people when I was growing up. So it's very, I'd be very quick to say, oh, no, I won't have that. But actually, by having that, and making a healthy choice when I'm not hungry, means that I'm less likely to make an unhealthy choice later on in the day, because I haven't eaten enough to keep myself going. I've even been setting snack alarms on my phone. So if I know I'm running of an evening, it's often, if I'm not careful because I'm working, I've not had anything since lunchtime. And then I'm trying to rush out the door at 6 o'clock, having not eaten anything, thinking actually I don't want to eat now because I'm going for a run. So I've been setting a snack alarm at 4 o'clock so I can have my snack, knowing I've got a couple of hours then before I run. And then I'm trying to rush out the door at 6 o'clock, having not eaten anything, thinking actually I don't want to eat now because I'm going for a run. So I've set I've been setting a snack alarm at 4 o'clock so I can have my snack, knowing I've got a couple of hours then before I run. just eating more, generally eating more protein, trying to find that carbs and fat balance, which would, I think, finding ways to get the protein into my diet, because it was, like many people, it was a little bit low. And she's just really, she's been really great at working with me, with much more about, not just getting me to do something completely different, but tweaking my diet, and giving me strategies for when I'm running then as well. What to eat when I'm running, how much to eat when I'm running, in order to make sure that I can keep, sustain those energy levels. And I think it's really allowed me to do this, really train hard. When the training program is, got a high training load, and you're not eating, you're almost like you're pushing yourself, you're damaging your muscles. You're not building that fitness. You're always just in a bit of a cycle. So I think I've found being much more conscious about what I'm eating feels like I've made strides forward then with my training.
Yeah. It sounds like you've got all of the pieces in place for the Epona. You've got your eating down, you've got your training down, you've got Stu and Hannah helping you. It sounds like everything's there, ready.
Hopefully.
How are you feeling about it?
I've done the work. I deserve to finish. When I am at 30 hours in, who knows? I don't. This run will take me anywhere between 40 and 50 hours, I think. It has to take less than 50 hours. That's the cut-off. But, and I don't think I need all of that time, but I do need a lot of it. And I've got to work out how I function trying to run at sort of 24 hours in, 30 hours in.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited to see how it goes. I know so many people doing it as well now. Yeah. And I am getting a little bit jealous of everything, and it just makes me want to go out and do more. But I've got my own challenges to focus on, so I'm trying not to let it bother me too much. Mm-hmm. But it is exciting. Yeah. So at the end of each podcast, what I like to do is I like to get the guest to set a challenge for the listeners for the week. So what would be your weekly challenge?
Do something that scares you. Do something that challenges you. Do something that scares you. Doesn't matter what it is, but do it, because that will keep us growing. It certainly kept me growing, emotionally, physically, psychologically, absolutely.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I hope you feel like a little bit less of an imposter after doing it. And you 100% are a runner. Don't take that away from yourself.
Thank you.
Where can people go to follow you and see how you do on this 100-miler?
Facebook. So I'm Sarah Skuse on Facebook, and I am on Instagram. And as you've already said, I am useless, and I don't know what my Instagram is, actually. But Facebook is usually where I post most of it, if I'm honest.
Well, I'll find out what your Instagram is, and I'll put it in the description below.
Thank you.
But like I said to you before, you're the only person I couldn't do any background research on, because you just don't post anything.
I shall try and post it.
Do it. I'll share it everywhere. People will find you and be like, you're 100% a runner. Don't put yourself down. And yeah, you might even get to meet people on these events, and people you wouldn't have met without having social media. That's what I found from my experience. The amount of people that I now know just from doing socials is amazing. So yeah, put yourself out there. That's my advice.
Thank you.
Thank you again for your time, and all the best with the Epona.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again for listening to another episode of the Adventure Athletes podcast. If you want to find out more about our guests, check out the links in the description below, where you'll also find a link to our website, our socials, and my BigMoose fundraiser. Let us know in the comments who you want to hear from next, and we'll try and get them booked on as best we can. And if you want to get involved with anything Adventure Athletes, we've got so many things going on. We've got our programming that we'll do for people trying to take their next step into their own personal adventures. We'll do sports massage. We've got events that we're organising both online and in person, and we've got some different activity days based around getting you outdoors and learning something new. So if you want to get involved, check out the website. If you want to find out more about the guest, check out the links in the description. And yeah, let us know who you want on next.